Inside the Magic, show number 459 for January 20th, 2014. It is Monday, January 20th, 2014. This is show 459 of Inside the Magic, and as always, I am your host, Ricky Briganti, with a bunch of fun Disney stuff this week. And before we get to all of it, I invite you to visit InsideTheMagic.net. There you will find all of our podcasts and videos and photos and news and articles and a whole lot more. And if you ever have any news, tips, questions, comments, or anything else you want to send in, you can do so by emailing me at ricky@InsideTheMagic.net, or you can call and leave a message at 407-4944-ITM. That's 4486. And now, let's get on with the show. This week's episode of Inside the Magic is brought to you by Magical Travel. Escape to your own carefree tropical getaway with Disney Cruise Line and save 20% off prevailing rates on select 3- and 4-night Bahamian cruises sailing from Port Canaveral in early 2014. Don't let this offer sail by calling Magical Travel today at 866-207-8387 or visit them online at magicaltravel.com to receive a free price quote, and be sure to mention Inside the Magic to receive your free Disney gift card for qualifying bookings when you book your Disney vacation with Magical Travel. And of course, thanks very much to all contributors to Inside the Magic, one-time donations, recurring donations, any of that good stuff. It all supports what I do, and I thank you for all of it. And now, let's get started with a trip around the world. It's been an interesting week in the world of theme park news and Disney news in general. A lot of exciting stuff to report on here, so jumping right into it. First up out here in Orlando, Walt Disney World, the most unique aspect of the upcoming Festival of Fantasy Parade, which is coming soon to the Magic Kingdom as a daytime parade, was revealed within the past few days, and that is none other than a big steampunk dragon. It is a float that's 26 feet high, 35 feet long, and it's Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, of course, is a very interesting and unique rendition or a version of Maleficent in dragon form, huge and very steampunk looking, you know, kind of shades of gold and brown and rust, and of course it'll appear to be, I imagine, steam powered, and it should be quite the sight. It was actually designed with the help of Michael Curry, who previously worked on Epcot's Tapestry of Nations parade, which a lot of people really enjoyed years ago. So he's helping out with the Festival of Fantasy. Still no debut date set for that. A lot of rumors going around that it'll happen in mid-March, but Disney's just saying spring at this point. But definitely looking forward to that. That float, along with several of the other floats, were actually spotted backstage around the Magic Kingdom area. They were, being transported. They were arriving. Some of the floats came from overseas, from Tokyo. A lot of new ones as well, and a lot of pictures been floating around online. Very, very interesting to see all of it come together. Really looking forward to seeing that parade soon. Now, in the world of television related to Walt Disney World, just a couple of nights ago was the latest installment of Saturday Night Live, hosted by Drake. And there was a skit that was kind of spoofing the Indiana Jones epic stunt spectacular over at Hollywood Studios. Pretty funny skit, not the best in the world, but as far as Saturday Night Live goes these days, not too bad. You can watch it in its entirety over at InsideTheMagic.net. I was over at Epcot yesterday. I'm recording on Monday now just because I got home from Epcot yesterday and was just too tired to record a podcast. But while I was there, I finally had a chance to check out the croissant donut that Disney has been making such a fuss about, the cronut, if you will. It seems to be this monumental pastry that has origins outside of the world of Disney, but Disney, of course, latched onto it, and it was good. Very warm, tasty, cinnamony, sugary. Definitely worth getting. A little pricey at about almost $5, but good to have at least once. It's over in the refreshment port of the World Showcase. And a little bit more about Epcot food coming up later in the show. Now, outside of the parks, up in Canada, Walt Disney Studios has worked with Quebec City's famed Hotel de Glace, or the Ice Hotel, to create a Frozen-inspired suite. It is an entire room, or suite, actually, literally made and sculpted out of ice and snow, modeled after Anna and Elsa's bedroom that you see in the film Frozen. There's also a Frozen activity cave included there. It's open now, available for reservations through March 23rd. A little pricey. It's $625 for 2 adults and 2 children to stay there during the week. If you want to stay on a Friday or Sunday, it is $775 for a night, and on Saturday it's $850. But it is certainly sparkly and twinkly and icy. And if you want to see a couple of pictures of it, you can visit our website as well. Now, this weekend was the 9th annual Otronicon in Orlando at the Orlando Science Center, and it's sort of a gathering of a lot of sponsored exhibits from major companies, tech companies, showing off all kinds of great gadgets, and Disney was there once again this year, as they have been for the last couple of years. This time they're showing off a bit of a Star Tours simulator, showing you how the Star Tours ride works, essentially, with the platform that it sits on, along with some other technologies as well. You can visit our YouTube channel to see video of that exhibit. Now, in the world of movies, the 86th Academy Awards nominations were announced this week, and Disney didn't have a ton, but they had a fair amount. There were 6 primary sort of true Disney nominations, and that was, of course, Frozen, nominated for Best Animated Feature Film, as well as Let It Go from Frozen, nominated for Best Original Song. Get a Horse, the short ahead of Frozen, nominated for Best Short Film Animated. Saving Mr. Banks is up for Best Original Score. That's the only nomination for Saving Mr. Banks. No acting, no writing, no directing. The Lone Ranger is up for 2 awards, actually. Makeup and hairstyling, as well as visual effects. And then if you want to venture out a little bit further in the Disney universe, Marvel's Iron Man 3 is up for visual effects as well. And Disney has the U.S. distribution of Miyazaki's The Wind Rises, and that is up against Frozen in animated feature film as well. And also, there's some Lucasfilm related ones in there. If you really want to push the boundaries even further, you could technically maybe call it 8 or 10 nominations for Disney, but the real core of it is 6. The Academy Awards, of course, will be on ABC on March 2nd at 4 p.m. Eastern. And also talking about the Oscars here, sort of vaguely Disney related, in the category of Best Song there, as I mentioned, Let It Go is one of the nominees. Well, there's a song called Alone Yet Not Alone from a movie of the same title, and you may be thinking, I've never heard of that. Well, you know what, before sort of this commotion that was going on around the Oscars, nobody had really heard of it. It's a song by frequent Disney composer Bruce Broughton. You might know him most recently from the Spaceship Earth, the latest score from Spaceship Earth, I believe he did. But he's done many others. He's gotten himself an Oscar nomination here, though there's a bit of a controversy surrounding it. Apparently, he was sort of involved in the world of the Academy in the past, a director of film something or other, and it's been said that perhaps his past had somehow influenced those who picked the nominees to include him for this song that no one's heard of from a movie that nobody's heard of. So I have no idea personally about any of that other than just what I've read online, but interesting footnote there simply because of the Disney connection. And speaking of awards, the Golden Globes, the winners were announced recently, and Frozen did indeed win Best Animated Feature. Also in the world of movies, J.J. Abrams has now said that the script for Star Wars Episode 7 is complete. Of course, there's always a chance for rewrites in the future or changes on set or whatever, but the basic script, Abrams says, is done. So a good milestone to hit on the way to casting and moving on to production of the next Star Wars film. And back to the topic of Frozen. Frozen doing very well at the box office still. It's been in theaters for 9 weeks, I believe, and it's still earning millions and millions of dollars, $12 million or so this weekend, bringing the domestic here in the United States total to $332 million. It's fourth place at the box office, but that's really good for being in the theater for more than 2 months now. And it is continuing to expand worldwide. It's up to around $759 million worldwide. Frozen is definitely doing very, very well. Now, in the world of television, it was announced this week that Disney and Pixar are making a new Toy Story-based Christmas special that's going to come out this year around Christmas time, and it's going to be called Toy Story That Time Forgot. So if you liked Toy Story of Terror just a few months ago, as I definitely did around Halloween time, you'll be delighted to hear that they'll be venturing the Toy Story characters into the world of Christmas. And speaking of television and Halloween and all of that, so there's a show that I've been watching for several seasons now, American Horror Story. I'm sure a lot of you have been as well. Normally, it's not something you would think of to have any sort of connection to Disney whatsoever. You might be thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll become a Halloween Horror Nights house over at Universal Orlando or something like that. But in this past episode of American Horror Story, there was actually a very prominent Disney theme park reference in the show. And here, just minor spoiler alert here for anyone who hasn't watched the latest episode. I'll give you a second to fast forward. Okay, so near the end of the latest episode, characters had to flee where they were, and one of them handed them tickets and said, "Here are 2 tickets to Epcot." And then they went and boarded a bus to Orlando. And the show's creators have said in this upcoming episode, a few days from now, the characters indeed will be on their way going to Epcot, which is bizarre. I wouldn't have expected that. So if you want to watch a horror-based show, definitely with many adult themes to it, that vaguely has a Disney connection, go ahead and check out American Horror Story on FX. Now, there's a lot of concert controversy lately surrounding SeaWorld and the whole Blackfish documentary thing, which, by the way, Blackfish was not nominated for an Academy Award. I'll just leave that there. And so remember the Bare Naked Ladies had canceled their SeaWorld Orlando concert a couple of weeks ago. It was supposed to be on February 15th. Well, just a few days ago, Universal Orlando announced the majority of their upcoming Mardi Gras concerts. And, well, guess what? The Bare Naked Ladies are still playing Orlando, just not SeaWorld. They're going to be over at Universal on that exact same day, February 15th. So they just hopped parks. Other acts that will be playing Mardi Gras at Universal Orlando this year, in order, starting February 8th, are Daughtry, Bare Naked Ladies, Thomas Rhett, Robin Thicke, Collective Soul, Prince Royce, Cody Simpson, Foreigner, Gavin DeGraw, Skillet, Leonard Skinnard, Kool and the Gang, Nelly, The Wanted, and there are still 6 to-be-determined dates in there, or acts in there, for some of the dates leading all the way through the end of May 31st. A really long Mardi Gras this year. It's all the way from February 8th to May 31st. Universal, for some reason, when they released that list, said, we're releasing the full list of concerts, and then there's 6 that aren't announced. Not exactly the full list, but I'm sure those others will be announced soon. Speaking of announcements, another sort of vaguely Disney-related thing here. Of course, Avatar Land now under construction over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Well, it was confirmed this week that stars of the first Avatar, Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana, will indeed be back not only for Avatar 2, but also Avatar 3 and Avatar 4, which will be released in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Somewhere in that time frame is when Disney will be opening their Avatar Land that'll tie in not only to the original movie, but also these 3 more movies that they're going to be coming out with, and I may imagine we'll be seeing Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana reprise their roles somewhere in the midst of all of the entertainment and attractions at Animal Kingdom. Back to the topic of Halloween here for just a moment. It was announced this week that the convention, Halloween Extreme, is coming back to Orlando, but not this year. It's coming back in 2015, actually. It'll be May 15th through 17th at the DoubleTree just across from Universal Orlando. Now, in the world of video games, here's something that is really fun. Disney's been working on this game called Star Wars Attack Squadrons. It's an online game you play in your web browser, quite impressively. Sort of similar to the old X-Wing and TIE Fighter games from years and years ago from LucasArts, which I played like crazy years ago when those came out. Well, the new game, still in beta testing now, is sort of you hop on, you do dogfighting in space against other players. You fly an X-Wing or a Y-Wing or an A-Wing or a TIE Fighter or whatever, and you're shooting around. There is a public beta test going on, which I was accepted into a few days ago, and as part of that, I'm not really supposed to say anything about what I experienced there, because it is a beta test and blah, blah, blah. I'll just simply say that it was tremendously fun. So you should definitely look forward to Star Wars Attack Squadrons coming whenever that comes. I definitely am. But on the downside of the video games and Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm and LucasArts going away, etc., apparently Disney has dropped the trademark for Star Wars 1313, which is a video game that many were looking forward to from LucasArts before that division was closed. So that game is most definitely dead at this point. Now in the world of comics, and we'll have a little bit more about this in just a few minutes, but Seekers of the Weird #1 is now on store shelves, on digital download on Marvel.com and on online, and etc. Museum of the Weird inspired comic book. Definitely one that you should pick up. I read through the first issue, really enjoyed it. It left in a place that I was dying to read the next one. It's a lot of Rolly Crump's old designs for the Museum of the Weird are integrated in there, but also new characters and this sort of fun story crafted around with these new characters doing sort of venturing into the Museum of the Weird and beyond and encountering all this, weird stuff. It's definitely sort of the darker side of Disney, but without going too extreme. It's still, family friendly, nothing gory or anything like that, but a little bit of spookiness going on there, which is fun. So if you have a chance, definitely pick up this first issue of Seekers of the Weird. There's only going to be 5. It's a 5-issue series, and there are the regular cover and 3 variant covers for the first one. So if you're interested in collecting them all, be aware of that. The future issues will also have variant covers. I don't know if they'll all have 3, but at least 1 that are being drawn by Imagineer Brian Crosby, which he's done a great job with that. Seems like everybody has. So anyway, a little bit more on that with a very special interview coming up in just a little bit. Final bit of news this week is that Disney President and CEO Bob Iger has said publicly that they are, quote, in discussions to develop, end quote, a stage show, Broadway show perhaps, based on Frozen. Seems like a natural selection for Frozen, a very Broadway movie to begin with Broadway stars, and the music is very Broadway, etc. Certainly it'll happen eventually, but Iger did say that they're basically in no rush. They don't need to crank it out immediately. It could come years from now. But those of you hoping to see Frozen live performance on a stage, it's almost definitely going to happen. And that's it for news from around the world this week. Today's tip comes in from Tony from Illinois, who writes, if you are a fan of Frozen and want to meet Anna and Elsa at Epcot, you need to go to Norway right at rope drop. The line gets very long, very fast. Anna and Elsa don't start greeting guests until 11 a.m., but at that time, if you show up at 11, the line is already over 3 hours long. If you go right at rope drop, 9 a.m., you'll have to wait that 2 hours till 11, but that's still better than it is for the rest of the day to meet the stars of Frozen. And Tony, great tip, definitely. I was just, as I said, at Epcot yesterday and went middle of the day, checked on it, and the line was 2 to 3 hours long, and it continues to be that or longer. If you show up at noon, you might even get a 4 or 5 hour wait just to have this little meet and greet. So waiting those 2 hours right at the beginning of the day at least guarantees you that it's only going to be those 2 hours. Give or take a few minutes. So everybody else, email your tips into tips@insidethemagic.net. Now, before we move into some fun main features here on the show, I would like to mention Capturing Magic, the pair of iPhone apps that are the ultimate tool for documenting and recording the magic of your Disney vacation. Whether you're out here at Walt Disney World or in California at Disneyland, Capturing Magic offers a helpful list of photo opportunities that you don't want to miss, magical memories to capture before, during, and after your trip. And while you're in the parks, the app's going to remind you of any desired photo ops on your list when you're near those locations, and then you take that picture, you mark off who's in the photo, what camera you used, and then later you can find, export, and organize all of the pictures, even emailing yourself a list of the photos that you took. So the Capturing Magic iPhone apps are available now in the iTunes App Store.
Inside the Magic proudly presents a restaurant review. We are guests, we are guests, we are guests.
While I was at Epcot yesterday, I had a chance to check out the new eatery over in the Morocco area of the World Showcase, and it is called Spice Road Table. It's a waterfront eatery that has been built basically across from the main Morocco pavilion. It's an enclosed location, though it does have some outdoor seating, and the idea is to bring sort of small plates to a table service environment, sort of a mixture of quick service, but it's table service, but you get small plates, so an interesting concept there. Of course, I didn't have everything on the menu, but I did have one of the samplers that they offer there, which is the best deal, absolutely. So you walk in, a fairly small location, you get seated to your table. The decorations are pretty minimal, but definitely enough to really give you that Moroccan theme. A lot of sort of little touches here and there, some very comfortable seating. There's booths and there's regular tables. There's a lot of windows overlooking the World Showcase Lagoon. Great view of Spaceship Earth out there. The windows are kind of tall and narrow, which is different than a lot of places around Epcot. Normally it's these big, huge vistas of the lagoon. It's kind of nice to sit inside somewhere that is right on the water, but still sort of crafts its own unique type of view of the lagoon. Kind of gives it a different spin that you're not used to on there. Really frames all of it very nice out there. So the menu, as I said, is small plates. A lot of it's Spice Road Table. The idea is that everything has this great Moroccan spice flair to it, and spice doesn't necessarily mean spicy. It is just spiced, herbs and spices, that sort of thing. And everything that I ate was fantastic. So the sampler that I had there were three items, three small plates on one larger plate, that for $16. Now, if you order each of these individually, they'd be $8 or $9 each, so you save around $10, maybe even a little bit more by ordering them as the sampler, and you get almost the same amount of food. I asked them, what's the difference, and two of the three are exactly the same as if you ordered the, quote-unquote full version, and then one of them is only slightly smaller, so definitely worth it. There are two different samplers, kind of the seafood one and the not seafood one, and I went with the not seafood one. So it had three things, as I said. There's a lamb slider, a harissa chicken roll, and a merguez sausage. And each sort of has little tiny accompaniments with it. It's definitely enough for lunch. $16, not a bad price for what you get, because it filled me up completely. It's not huge portions. Certainly, if I were to have ordered one of those things for $9, maybe I wouldn't have been too happy, because it would have been like one little lamb slider for $9. But ordering all three of those for $16, not bad at all. The lamb slider was great, very flavorful, savory, hearty, cooked very well, not overdone. It was juicy, had a great creamy tzatziki sauce on top, a nice sort of multi-grain bun, and it was served with some wonderfully pungent olives on the side. You have to be a big olive fan to like these, which I am. So those were fantastic. Really, overall, the bun was fresh, great. I'm a big fan of lamb sliders to begin with, or burgers or whatever, and this one definitely held up to any of the others that I've had. The harissa chicken roll was also good. You can think about maybe you've had a Southwest egg roll. Take that. Very similar sort of textures, a little bit of a squishiness inside, but also a lot of different, some crunchiness as well. Definitely crunchy on the outside. But this is not Southwest. It's Moroccan flavors. So a little bit more on the exotic spices, if you will, but serves with a great dipping sauce as well. Out of the three, that was probably my least favorite, only because it wasn't unique. it felt like something I had many other places. But it was still very good. The merguez sausage, also fantastic, served over some very light tomato salsa sort of thing, but that was really acting as a cooling for the sausage. The sausage was very spicy. It didn't seem like it at first. A very dense sausage, but you cut a small piece and eat it, and you're like, oh, that has a great robust flavor, and then all of a sudden your tongue is on fire. So it's good that Disney is serving something that can really live up to the name and live up to what you would expect to get out of somewhere like that. I thought it was good. Again, if you order just the small plates on their own, you might not be as happy because it really is a small plate for the price. But the sampler is definitely a great way to go. Now, I also ordered a non-alcoholic drink called the Moroccan Sunrise, which was a mixture of a couple of fruit juices. There was what they called orange water in there, and pineapple and strawberry juice, I believe. And they had another one similar to that with some watermelon. That's $6, and it was delicious. It was great, fresh fruit juice, but no refills. And I definitely finished it like halfway through my meal because it was spicy, and then I needed to get some water afterwards. I didn't feel like it was worth $6. If it had been $6 including a refill, that would have been great, or maybe $3, and I could have ordered 2 of them. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting that for $6. But I would definitely say go check out Spice Road Table if you're looking for. It was very fast to get in, to get seated, to get served. It was comfortable. Like I said, great views of Spaceship Earth and the World Showcase Lagoon, and a good addition to Epcot overall. I mean, Epcot has a ton of restaurants. It's hard to pick which one you go to, but I would say for those looking for just a really good, and this is kind of what you're paying for here. It's not only that it's small, and you think maybe it's too pricey for that. The food is really good, so I'll pay a premium if food quality is there. So there it is, my quick review of Spice Road Table. I'm going to be posting some pictures very soon over at InsideTheMagic.net, so you can see all the food that I just described and the decorations and the restaurant in general. So check that out over on the website very soon. As I mentioned earlier, the first issue of Seekers of the Weird, the new comic from Disney and Marvel, based on the old Museum of the Weird concepts from years and years ago, kind of related to the Haunted Mansion. That first issue is out. And just a couple of days ago at Beach Ball Comics in Anaheim, right near Disneyland, was a signing for the Seekers of the Weird comic. The writer of the comic was there, as well as some of the Imagineers that worked on it, and famed Imagineer Rolly Crump, the creator of the Museum of the Weird itself, was there as well. He doesn't make a whole lot of public appearances, so it was great that he was there. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't be there personally. However, our helpful folks from theconfluencecovers.com, Sean and Carmel, were there, and I sent them to talk to Rolly Crump about Seekers of the Weird and Museum of the Weird and Walt Disney, etc. It was a wonderful, wonderful interview that I'm going to share with you right now. Here is none other than Imagineer Rolly Crump.
All right, we are here at Beach Ball Comics in Anaheim, California for the big Seekers of the Weird kickoff event release. And so we're here with the Disney legend, Rolly Crump, to ask a few questions. So we thank you very much for being here. We're wondering, what did you think when you first learned that Museums of the Weird would be being turned into a comic book?
I thought it was great. I thought it was super. I mean, after being buried all these years,
right,
for it to climb out of its little grave, I just thought it was marvelous. So I think it's a beautiful way to introduce the Museum of the Weird to everyone, and maybe hopefully someday we'll build one,
That was exactly what we were thinking as we saw it, yeah. What did Walt, when you introduced the idea to Walt Disney, what did he think about the drawings you saw? What did he say?
Well, it was an interesting story, and I'll try to keep it short. We had a meeting with him on all the ideas that we were doing for the Haunted Mansion, and I had come up with these little weird drawings because I always felt that the mansion was too corny. I felt that it needed some kind of surrealistic qualities to it, and I had seen some movies, Fellini movies, and things that I felt had a lot of imagination in that area. And so because of that, I was influenced to start doing little sketches that represented some of the films I had seen. One of them was the French director that did the film Beauty and the Beast back in the 50s, and his whole castle that's human arms holding torches and faces on the fireplace with smoke coming out of them. And I thought that's the kind of stuff that should be in here. So I was presenting it to Walt, and he said, "Yeah, Rolly, but how are you going to use it?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Yeah, why did you? Why, he was just asking me why I did all this." I just kept saying, "Well, I think that it needs some surrealistic quality in it, So he and I went back and forth with all the models and sketches that I had, and finally said, "Okay." And he said, "I'm out of here," and he went home. Well, the next morning at 7 o'clock, I came to work, and Walt's sitting in my chair, and the first thing he said to me was, "You son of a." And I said, "Oh, whoa, what's that?" And he said, "No," he said, "I didn't get an ounce of sleep last night because of all those weird drawings you showed me." And I said, "Oh, God, I'm sorry." He was still dressed in the same clothes that he wore the day before, so I realized that he hadn't changed much. So he said, "But you know what?" He says, "I figured out how we're going to do it." And I said, "You do?" And he says, "Yeah, we're going to make a museum, and it's going to be called the Museum of the Weird." And he says, "And you can do all the weird stuff you want, and we'll put it in the museum." And he says, "And what we'll do is we'll tell the public and all of our guests that these weird things came from all over the world."
Right.
So it was his idea. I mean, Walt would take something that you were doing, and then he'd take it to the next two or three levels up above. So
that's an awesome story.
It's a beautiful story.
Enhances it a lot. How did you feel as time went on and the project didn't go forward?
Well, there was a lot of reasons why it didn't go forward. Walt passed away. If Walt hadn't, because it was his idea, for God's sakes, and so because he passed away, then it just died.
Right.
And nobody wanted to mess with it.
Right.
And so it kind of disappeared.
And now it lives again in a new form.
Yeah.
How much of the Museum of the Weird went into Haunted Mansion?
Well, actually, a lot of the sketches that were scheduled to go into the Museum of the Weird were sketches I did for the mansion.
Gotcha.
One of them in particular is I came up with the idea way back in the beginning when Yale and I were working on the mansion of a seance room. And so what happened was Claude Coates then became the art director and also Mark Davis. They decided to do a seance room, but as far as I was concerned, it didn't have the impact that I felt it should have.
Right.
And so that was a little disappointment. They borrowed a few things that I did, like the organ player and everything.
Right.
So I just felt kind of bad about it.
Right. Seeing it come to Seekers of the Weird now and making that transition, what did you think of the first comic book of Seekers of the Weird?
I thought it was great.
Okay.
I think what blew me away, which I thought was fantastic, that they used almost all the little pieces that I had designed, and they they intertwined them.
Right.
And I'd look and say, "Oh wow!"
Right.
So it was kind of it was a pleasant surprise, and I thought it was great.
It's a great tribute. It's very
cool.
One last question. Did you have any comic favorites growing up? Or any comic book characters?
I did, in which I have a very sad story to tell you. Oh. I had the original Superman and Batman comic books. And I had them for like 20 years, and finally one day I said, "The hell with me." I just threw a friggin' fortune. Right. No, when I was a kid, those were my two favorite.
Wow.
In fact, when I'd come home after school, I'd actually put tracing paper over Batman and draw him, and I did the same thing, with Superman. I had to trace the characters to get the feel of them.
Wow.
So I was just doing that when I was 9, 10 years old.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
and all that brings us today.
Drawings.
Right. Well, we thank you very much for all your contributions to everything, everything that you've done, and then obviously for letting us live the story here in Seekers of the Weird. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Always wonderful to hear stories about the days of Walt Disney and his creations, and Rolly is just a fantastic guy with so many wonderful stories to tell. Immediately, like seconds after that interview ended, there was a huge crowd that came in to the comic store and just lasted for hours and hours as Rolly and the other Imagineers, Brian Crosby, Josh Shipley, Tom Morris, and a few others were all there to just sign away and meet and greet and take pictures, and and it was definitely a wonderful event. I look forward to the rest of the issues, the next 4 issues of Seekers of the Weird, and of course it's all part of this greater Disney Kingdoms concept, and we have yet to see what that is going to be all about, with more theme park inspired comics from Disney and Marvel. So a lot to look forward to there. Thanks again to Sean and Carmel from theconfluencecovers.com for conducting that interview. Now, Sean and Carmel actually had a rather busy day on Saturday. In addition to covering that event over at Beach Ball Comics for us, they were already planning on heading over to Knott's Berry Farm, because Saturday was the first day of Billy Hill and the Hillbillies from Disneyland. Well, they're not at Disneyland anymore. They have moved over to Knott's now as Krazy Kirk and the Hillbillies. Disneyland decided recently they didn't want the act there anymore, despite being there for 20-some years. And, well, they wanted to keep playing, so Knott's has scooped them up, and Sean and Carmel were there for one of the very first performances of now Krazy Kirk and the Hillbillies, and so I want to bring some of that to you right now. Here's a couple of songs and the beginning of one of their shows, which there were a whole lot of Disney fans lined up, as you might imagine, to see the much welcome return of what was once Billy Hill and the Hillbillies, now Krazy Kirk and the Hillbillies at Knott's Berry Farm.
Self-proclaimed the best overall band west of Los Angeles. You've got Dynamite Denny, Whistling Rick, and Anders. And here I am, Krazy Kirk. Feeling really crazy today. I'm crazy. We have video cameras on this one. This is an important show. This is important that you react, because we're having this is being videoed. So let's pretend that we just walked up here. Let's do Hamilton County Breakdown. Ready? Well, y'all, it's hard to do this many shows in a day. be good every single time, you know. It's a lot of pressure on us back at the other place. We can get away with just doing the same show over and over again. Which drove us crazy. It's like water torture, like Chinese water torture. Noggin drives you crazy, but now we're in a situation that's really awkward. We have to play more songs. So we're trying to, we kind of start out kind of lame, you know? Just play our little lame song. And we put a few good ones in there. And we try to close with something funny. Exciting. This is next song. It's not lame at all. I don't know why I said that. I should have said that. It's probably the most it's actually been asked, we get requested for this all the time. It's a standard, it's a cowboy song called Ghost Riders in the Sky. Look out, hoping right now on a dark and windy day. Up on a ridge he rested as he went along his way. All the nights were made, he heard a ride as he saw out through the ragged sky and up the cloudy draw. Their brands were still on fire, their hooves were made of steel. Their horns were black and shiny, their hot breath you could feel. Up on the field with the legs that thunder through the sky. All the riders coming hard, and you heard the mournful cry. Yeah! Yippee-yi-yay! Yippee-yi-yay! Ghost riders in the sky. Their faces gaunt, their eyes blurred, their shirts all soaked with sweat. Ooh, gross. He's a trying hard to catch that herd, he ain't got him yet. Cause they got a right forever that rings up in the sky. Tunnels are snorting fire as they run out in a crowd. Yeah! Yippee-yi-yay! Yippee-yi-yay! Ghost riders in the sky. Oh, goodness! How about that, huh? As the riders come by, and you heard one call his name. Billy, if you want to say it, you're hot and soul about another range. Oh no, then cowboy, change your ways to do what you ride. Trying to catch the devil's bird across the seas of the sky. Yeah, yippee-yi-yay! Yippee-yi-yay! Ghost riders in the sky. Hey, again. Oh, yippee-yi-yay! Yippee-yi-yay! Ghost riders in the sky. Ghost riders in the sky. Ah, Ghost riders in the sky.
Now, there is much, much more to that show, including video of what you just heard and the rest of the show. You can check that out over at, once again, Sean and Carmel's website, theconfluencecovers.com. That's the CONFLUENCE covers.com. The name comes from the fact that they cover a lot of conventions, so Confluence. Anyway, you can find it over there, along with all the other convention fun stuff. So, once again, thanks to Sean and Carmel for all the good fun this week.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Ricky, this is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Inside the Magic listener feedback.
I received a tremendous amount of emails this week with all kinds of great questions. So without further delay, first up is an email from Matt, who writes, my family and I always travel to California once a year to go to Disneyland. I live in Arizona, so it is a long drive, and I've been to the park every year of my life, 17 times now, and I'm planning to go again either the last week of January or the first week of February. The thing is, when I usually go, it's a big trip, around 4 to 6 days, so it's no problem fitting everything in. We usually ride all the rides a few times, and our favorite rides a bunch of times. However, this time is different because I'm just going there for one day, and I was wondering if you could give me a sort of list or guide as to what to do to maximize the ability to do as much as possible for this day. Matt, you might not like my answer here, but I'm going to go out on a limb. You've been there a lot of times. You usually go for the days to cram everything into many days, multiple times. This might be a good opportunity to take a step back a little bit and enjoy a more casual Disney. This is what I do when I go to Disneyland, because I've been there a lot of times as well. And I don't go for the must-see everything anymore. Chances are you're going to go back probably next year. Sounds like you've been going every year. So you don't need to see everything this trip. Pick your favorites. You know, for me, gotta do the Haunted Mansion. I usually do Pirates. Space Mountain is better out in California than Florida, so I just go on Space Mountain. You know, things like that. Of course, California Adventure, the uniqueness there now. But for the most part, I just take it easy, go with the flow, whatever I feel like doing a lot of relaxing and resting and sitting and people watching and enjoying the atmosphere. Buena Vista Street is wonderful for doing that. Dine at Carthay Circle, take a ride on the red car, some leisurely things that you can do, and you might just find that taking a slower trip to Disneyland might really, as you said, maximize your trip. Because it's different. You sort of get a different take. Look for those little things that maybe you haven't done before because you were always in a rush to do the big rides and the big shows, and maybe you always skipped over something. Go to the Frontierland Shooting Gallery and take that in for a few minutes. And, little things like that can really enhance a Disneyland experience without waiting in all these lines and worrying about trying to cram so much in. So, personally, that's my advice. That's how I like to take a trip to the parks. I don't like the rush, go, gotta see everything mentality. Just, take it easy, and if whatever you feel like doing at the moment, go for it. And if at the end of the day, you've been there all day, you're tired, but you're satisfied that you feel like you've had a really fun day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you've seen everything. Next email, and this is actually going to be a couple of emails about FastPass Plus, which I talked about last week. Kyle writes, my family and I are going to Walt Disney World in February and have the opportunity to use FastPass Plus. With all the new choices for FastPass Plus, what attractions do you suggest getting a reservation for, and which attractions do you not suggest getting a reservation for? Kyle, very good question, and it's a hard question to answer because it depends on what you want to do. The whole point of FastPass Plus is that you get to reserve not only what Disney wants you to be able to reserve, but whatever you want. If you are, the way you should select your FastPass Plus, in my opinion, is the things that you absolutely want to see, that you don't want to have to wait for, you don't want to have to, going into the park, first thing, that you're going to be able to do those things. And that frees your mind up. You don't have to worry, is this going to be available? Is the line going to be too long? Is this, is that? You're going to do those things. And that way you can sort of open your eyes to everything else that's in the park and not have to, concern yourself with those things. So that's the approach that I ultimately will be taking with a FastPass Plus is just to use it to my advantage, peace of mind, knowing that I definitely will be able to do this, and this, and not the rest. Now, a little bit more than that, I don't know that I would suggest getting it for like a parade viewing area. I mean, you can watch a parade from just about anywhere. You can walk up 3 seconds before a parade starts and generally get a decent view as long as it's not a super busy time. I don't think that's really necessary. Same with the fireworks. I mean, if you want that perfect ultimate perfect, wonderful spot, then maybe. Or if you have kids, they don't want to sit and wait for that perfect spot either. But for the most part, I think those may be unnecessary. But short of that, it's sort of just a personal preference thing. Whatever you think you want to use it the most for, that's what it's there for. And next email about the same topic is from Ryan, who writes, any insight as to if or how FastPass Plus will affect the Baby Swap program? If they don't have any more paper tickets, how will the Baby Swap work? Well, Baby Swap has been around for years. It's been around since before FastPass even existed at all. Pretty sure. So I don't think this is really going to affect it much. The logistics of it may change exactly how it works, but that can be explained on a per attraction basis by the cast member right there. You just have to go up and say, hey, I want to do a baby swap, and they'll say, oh, for this ride you do this, and that's how it's going to work. I mean, it's not. Baby Swap and FastPass are not necessarily linked. They don't have to go hand in hand. So I don't know that FastPass Plus specifically will have an effect on that. I mean, if you make your family reservations, obviously you want to go and ride at a certain time, but if you show up and you say, hey, our family's reservation is at 3 p.m. for whatever ride, and we want to do Baby Swap, you just tell them that, and they'll accommodate. That's what Disney does. Next is a great email, a worthy correction here from Jeff, who writes, I finally listened to the second half of your ear interview. I enjoyed it, but I think you were unfair in your discussion of the limited time magic tour of Expedition Everest. It happens to be one of my favorite Disney videos on YouTube, and it didn't sound like you saw it, so I provided a link. I found the Imagineer, who led the tour, Colleen, to be full of information, providing details that I never would have known without this video tour. I would have loved to have been in that group. You said she is just a painter, which was also unfair. I feel paint is very important part of the look and feel of the park, so if you want to see why someone like me might appreciate the video tour, you can check it out, and he did send over the link, which I'll put in the show notes. But Jeff, a good point. Now, I did not attend this tour. However, my sort of comment that she was just a painter was based on somebody who did attend the tour, who had told me that they were turned off by the person who led the tour because they weren't somebody sort of in charge of developing the ride. They didn't have, sort of the intricate knowledge of the creation, the behind-the-scenes sort of leading up to the actual construction, etc. Obviously, painting an attraction is hugely important. I didn't mean to say that painters aren't valuable to Disney. I mean, they're a huge part about how everything looks. All I simply meant was they weren't, the creative director or the, somebody who was a big wig at Imagineering leading the tour. It was a hands-on worker that could only share stories, I guess, that she was personally attached to, and some may like that, and some may be expecting a bit more out of it. When Disney comes out and says you will have an Imagineer-led tour of something, everybody immediately jumps to the conclusion that it's going to be these faces that you see in the PR stuff, the videos on the Disney Parks blog, the press, etc., the people who come out for interviews. Those are the people who people want to see leading these tours if they're being billed as that. And then when you get somebody you're unfamiliar with that maybe just worked on one part of the attraction rather than being able to answer everything about it from design to construction to completion, then people can get a little bit disappointed because their expectations were not properly set. If they had said it was, in advance, saying, hey, you're going to be led around by one of the Imagineers who helped paint the attraction, then better expectations would be set. So that's kind of where I was coming from. Anyway, thanks for the email. Next is an email from E.T., probably not the extraterrestrial, but E.T. writes, I just finished listening to show 458 and your segment on FastPass Plus. I guess we're going back to that topic. I usually organize these things better. Anyway, continuing with the email, I'm also interested in how Disney plans to address getting fast passes at different parks. And I'm sure it won't take long for fans to figure out the different ways to maximize the system. Last November, I was meeting some friends for the first Mickey's Christmas party, so I knew I had only about till 3 p.m. to do other things before heading to the Magic Kingdom, so I woke up early, headed to Animal Kingdom for early magic hours, and while on the bus to Animal Kingdom, I used my Disney experience to get fast passes for Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Toy Story Mania at Hollywood Studios at 11. Since I got to Animal Kingdom early, I was able to ride the standby lines of Safari, Everest, Festival of the Lion King, and enjoy the animals on the trails and Discovery Island before heading over to the studios to hit the big 3 rides, and still had plenty of time to meet up for the Christmas party. If I didn't have FastPass Plus, I would have had to go to the studios first, get a FastPass for Toy Story Mania, or wait in the 2-hour line. So I think we just have to figure out the best way to use the system, even if they don't allow more than 3 passes a day. Very good point there, E.T. It is all about figuring the system out. And right now, because the system is sort of still in a state of flux, it is hard to do that. You can kind of work with what they have now, but there's no guarantee that it'll be working the same way tomorrow. But yes, it sounds like you had a great way there. If you do want to do the park hopping, hit one park early in the morning when there are no lines, but already plan for your next park a little bit later. Now, when you get to that park, you already have the fast passes that you normally would have had to grab in the morning, like you said. That is kind of the goal of the Fast Pass Plus system for those who can access my Disney experience, is that you don't have to rush to the park first thing in the morning to grab that Fast Pass out of fear that they're going to go away because you've either already booked it or they have the allotment to sort of make it for the day in the park, supposedly. We'll see how that works. So far, it seems like there have been some very, very long lines in the morning to go to those kiosks that are around the parks at Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, but I have a feeling that will die down as more and more people figure it out and Disney sort of tweaks the system. So yes, there will definitely be ways of sort of working the system to your best advantage. It just may not be the same ways that people are used to for so many years now. It's about sort of reinventing the strategies for having the most fun in the parks with the least amount of time waiting in line. Next, emails from James, who writes, long time listener, enjoy your show. I have to make this comment, an observation, from an observation. When Universal Studios Islands of Adventure opened the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you were, well, let's say, not so interested. I know you were impressed with the detail and the new ride technology, but didn't show interest in the story itself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you had also not read a single Harry Potter book and only saw one movie or so. Now let's fast forward to the present, and you have shown substantial interest in the new expansion going on at Diagon Alley. You posted the opening of your special vault key and said you were really looking forward to opening day. Have your feelings toward the story changed, or are you just interested in what the new park is going to offer in rides and detailing? I, for one, is a huge fan of the books and movies, and even at the age of 47 can understand if you would just be interested in the area and not the story. Here's why. I've been a Disney fan and park goer since 1971 Disneyland and 1975 Walt Disney World, and I have seen firsthand the development of the parks and the changes that have taken place. The reason I mention this, I'm not really a fan of all the Disney movies or stories that they tell through the parks and attractions, yet I am a fan of Disney's way of letting people experience things in real life, or that real life would not allow. And James, you're absolutely right there. Just to make a small correction on what you said, I had seen all of the Harry Potter movies up until that point when the first part of the Wizarding World opened. I hadn't seen them up until maybe a couple months before, but I did make sure to watch them all before it opened so I would know what was going on. No, I still have not read the books. I have no interest in reading the books, and you are correct. I am not a huge fan of Harry Potter in general. The movies are good. I don't think they're great. I think they get better as the series goes on, but none of them really stood out to me as, mind-blowing favorite movie, etc. They're good. I mean, they're entertaining, certainly, but they're just not my favorites, not my personal. But however, as the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is phenomenal. In theme park themed entertainment, it is wonderful, and for that reason, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Universal has in store for us for Diagon Alley, and we're going to be seeing a preview of some of that in just a few days. Some very exciting things coming up. A lot of details going to be coming out this week about Diagon Alley and a Harry Potter celebration over the coming weekend, so you can look forward to a whole lot of Harry Potter coming up very soon. But I'm not looking forward to it from a Harry Potter fan perspective, more of a theme park fan perspective. But I'm really excited to see what amazing attractions, shows, technologies, merchandise, whatever, everything, detailing, a themed environment, a restaurant, all of that. Somewhere that I can go and be in and be part of the experience, and just the excitement of opening up something that huge is always thrilling. So that is what I am most looking forward to out of it. Next email is from Keith, who writes, was it ever confirmed or denied that the agency that Chip and Dale worked for in Rescue Rangers TV series was the same agency that Bernard and Bianca worked for in the Rescuers film? Am I on to something, or am I reading too much into it? Keith, definitely some similarities there. I think it was the Rescue Aid Society in the Rescuers versus the Rescue Rangers in Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers for the Disney Afternoon. Now, I'm sure there is a connection to be made there. However, I know Rescue Rangers was not originally going to be a Chip and Dale show. It was more of an Indiana Jones type of show. I mean, you look at how Chip is dressed; it's very Indiana Jones. And there was originally going to be a character called Kit Colby, who had the same leather jacket and a fedora, and was a very adventurous sort of thing. And then it eventually morphed into what became Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. So it wasn't quite the same thing. I'm sure somewhere in there was a connection, but The Rescuers is not a film that generation of children had probably seen that much. I had seen The Rescuers Down Under at that age, but I don't know that I had ever seen The Rescuers, the original film, and they're very different. So it's I'm not sure, honestly, if there is a specific connection there. I have to imagine that there was, but it was never intended to be like a follow-up to those films. And we'll go ahead and wrap up the listener feedback there. That'll do it for this week. But please keep those emails and questions and comments coming. I have a whole lot more already lined up here, and would be happy to share even more as we move on. And that'll do it for show 459 of Inside the Magic. Hopefully you enjoyed the fun from California this week. A bit of what used to be Billy Hill and the Hillbillies, now Krazy Kirk over at Knott's Berry Farm, just down the road from Disneyland. So it's always interesting to see when those acts, especially like this, an act that's been at Disneyland for so many years. So many fans love them. And then one day it's just like, not at Disneyland anymore. But Knott swooped in, picked them up, and as you heard them mention, they're sort of a different act. At Disneyland, they kind of played the same thing over and over and over, whereas Knott's is giving them more freedom to play more music, so you could see multiple sets during the day and see and hear completely different songs. So that's nice. And also, Rolly Crump, of course, great to hear from him. First time he's been here on this show, which is great. I wish I had a chance to be there in person to talk to him. Fortunately, Sean and Carmel were there, and it was a great conversation with him. Maybe we'll have to have him on again sometime in the future for a longer conversation, because we just barely touched on topics of the Museum of the Weird and Haunted Mansion, etc. Definitely a very interesting guy. So there's that. As I said just a minute ago, lots of Harry Potter coming up very soon. Some very exciting things that you're going to stay tuned to Inside the Magic this week. Coming up starting Thursday morning at 10:30 a.m. It's going to be a big reveal of a lot of Harry Potter Diagon Alley related stuff, and then throughout the weekend is going to be a celebration of all things Harry Potter from Universal, theme parks and otherwise. I'm going to cover as much of that as I humanly can. There's going to be a lot going on, so should be pretty exciting coming up. Of course, the Diagon Alley's not opening for a few months now, several months, and maybe we'll get an opening date this week. I don't know. We'll see. But probably, not till May, June, something like that. Probably June. Maybe soft openings in May. But anyway, it's a while away. But it's fun to watch all the construction come together, and lots of excitement to look forward to there. And plenty more in the future. So I do want to thank Magical Travel for sponsoring this week's episode of Inside the Magic. You can find out more about their services by visiting magicaltravel.com. And also check out Capturing Magic for Walt Disney World and Disneyland to keep track of all your photos in the parks. Search for that on the iTunes store. So thanks for listening each and every week. And have a magical week. Bye.
Just a dream away.